Volunteers, please, and each volunteer is paid for 5 minutes so that
Okay,
I
so
can fill in gaps.
I just sent the volunteers and I sent their names to your DM, sir.
Yeah, call them. You moderate them. Moderate them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's clinical we are doing now. It's not
Toby,
just enough
Toby,
to teach you
Bukunle,
about OPEC.
Toby.
Uh-huh. I'm sure you guys read the chapters in the materials I sent to you, and you read other materials. But I sent enough materials to class on all the topics I'm supposed to be covering and much more. So I just want to be sure that you guys did the needful. So let's have the volunteers, please.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. My name is Toby Bikule. Okay, sir. So on the first question, the basis of Nigeria's membership of OPEC and why what Nigeria has benefited from its membership of OPEC. Okay. Firstly, the first benefit that Nigeria has got from OPEC was that, all right, before Nigeria's membership of OPEC, our industry was dominated by multinational oil companies, and under the old traditional concession, in which the host countries were put at a disadvantage. So Nigeria's membership of OPEC, because by virtue of the fact that Nigeria has joined OPEC, it has given Nigeria more power over its own petroleum industry. So 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 the principle of consultation was recognized, in which that the oil companies must consult with us under the principle of permanent sovereignty over natural resources. So following the emergence of our Nigerian National Oil Corporation, which was established in 1971 and later changed to Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, gained control over the management of the upstream sector. So now, in this way, Nigeria put an end to what was to it an humiliating spectacle of unilateral determination of oil prices by the companies. So another thing Nigeria has benefited is the increase in oil prices, which was set by OPEC. Because OPEC increased some prices, we can say that Nigeria has benefited more in terms of revenue and the rest. Okay, another thing that Nigeria has benefited from OPEC is that Nigeria has successfully been able to cement its position as an African leader, and this is seen in its contribution to the independence of Angola and Zimbabwe. And so, to mention a few, those are some of the benefits in which Nigeria has gained from its membership with OPEC. So for the case against Nigeria's continued membership of OPEC, I'll be arguing for. Can you hear me, sir?
Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'll be arguing for Nigeria's continued membership. Then some of my co-volunteers will be arguing against. Okay, so why I believe that Nigeria should continue to be a member of OPEC is that okay. I don't think that Nigeria can operate in a unilateral market. What do I mean? I believe that Nigeria is able to grow in a market that is competitive. Those that are arguing against will say that that Nigeria spends much with to sponsor the OPEC fund. But I believe there is only a little consideration compared to what Nigeria benefits from OPEC. And so And I also think that if Nigeria should disintegrate, Nigeria is OPEC's largest African contributor. If Nigeria should disintegrate from OPEC, it's going to give the Western, that is particularly the United States, which is OPEC's number one competitor, it will give them an occasion. Like I don't know if you understand what I mean. It would Okay, now, for instance, Nigeria produces a crude oil product called Boni Light, which is very, very similar in quality to what the US produce, that is American shale. So if Nigeria should withdraw its participation from OPEC, it's going to give the market advantage to the United States. So and I don't believe that and yes, those that are arguing against would say that Nigeria has been incurring loss from its continued membership with OPEC. Like it has not been Nigeria has not witnessed so much rise in the influence in its sale of oil in its oil market. But according to an IMF study, it has already shown that the present price of oil does not appear to be higher than what the economic theory would suggest it to be appropriate. So yes, that's my argument for, sir.
Okay, fair enough. I don't want to make my comments now. Let me listen to the other three volunteers, then I will fill in the gap, then you guys can ask your question. Let's have the next presenter.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hello?
can. Yes, we can.
Go
Yes, we can.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll be arguing against. So I'll first of all start by helping us understand OPEC and how it relates to Nigeria. So OPEC, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, is a group of oil producing nations. They work together to coordinate petroleum prices and also to secure stable incomes for member states, right? Nigeria joined OPEC in 1971. However, OPEC was created in 1960 in response to the dominance of Western oil companies. You could say like the Seven Sisters that exploited oil-rich countries. What they did was that they paid low prices while retaining most profits. So it was more like a master-servant relationship. It was not some sort of like partnership, right? It was more like a rent they paid, but very little rent. It was nothing initially. So Nigeria joined, right? It was this was rooted in the principle of permanent sovereignty over natural resources of 1962 resolution, I believe. So it was just an aim to like asset control over our energy resources and participate in global oil governance. Now, what OPEC does in general is that OPEC controls oil production and pricing policies, and it secures fairer revenues and representation in the global market of member states. So OPEC aims to like benefit member states. It's a way to shield oil producing countries from exploitation by multinational oil companies, the Seven Sisters, you could say that. So now I'm saying that I'm arguing against Nigeria continuous membership in OPEC, and I have 4 points here. So the first point I want to mention is the most relevant, which is Nigeria has lost its autonomy because OPEC, they give quotas, I believe it's annually, that is of production of oil. So you cannot exceed a certain number of barrels to produce per year, right? And Nigeria, if you look at our present economy, oil is the major thing we have. It's our major resource. We cannot say, oh, because we're trying to stand by, the quotas, we should not benefit from our oil. So it limits our ability to maximize revenues during high demand. Secondly, we understand that OPEC has certain job to do, which is to like control prices. However, prices are often driven by global demand. and it kind of leaves Nigeria vulnerable to price crashes. So even with or without OPEC, you still see these things happening. Then also, membership cost. To join OPEC, you have to pay $2 million, $2 million, yes, annual membership. And this was why Ecuador and Indonesia had to drop out of OPEC because they could not continue. Indonesia was a net exporter of oil before, but then it became a net importer. So it could no longer keep up with paying those fees. Now that $2 million, imagine if we put it into our own developing other sectors, agricultural sector, it would, even technology, it would benefit us more than paying that amount of money. Like Nigeria is staggering at this point. It makes no sense that we are spending so much money every year just to become a member of OPEC when there are other countries that are not paying all those things and they're still thriving and utilizing their oil resources properly, right? And then I feel like Nigeria's heavy reliance on oil revenues hampers efforts to like diversify its economy. So yeah, so I think that's basically all of what I have here. Did everyone hear me?
Yeah, thank you, Chidera. Thank you. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Thank you, Chidera.
All right.
Thank you. Fisayo.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Professor. Good morning, sir. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so the first question is on the basis of Nigeria's membership in OPEC. So we got to know that Nigeria joined OPEC in 1971 to improve its economy and foreign exchange earning. And also based on the fact of the basis of concession, where Nigeria wanted to the government needed to take control of the price tags of oil over the multinational oil companies because of how the government did not have enough control over the multinational oil company. Yes, so they had many bases why they wanted to be in OPEC. First, Nigeria wanted to improve its petroleum taxation administration to compete with other OPEC members. They also wanted to gain more control of oil industry upstream sector, wanted to end, like I said in the beginning, they wanted to end the unilateral determination of oil prices by oil companies. That was before the modern concession came into place. And also in the issue of foreign capital, they needed to also generate foreign capitals, and that's in the issue of export and import of crude oil to other countries. And in alignment with other oil exporters, Nigeria also wanted to align its aspirations and dreams with other exporting countries so that they say, okay, Nigeria is also a country that is part of an OPEC member who also has a lot of oil, barrels of oil to also export to other countries, just to have that name in quote, and to maintain oil stability. And also, we also know that Nigeria joint organization with the purpose of trading and natural resources to improve on our foreign exchange earning and to also boost our economy. And ever since then, our economy and foreign exchange earnings have been largely dependent on the production quota given by OPEC. So, as we've seen the basis of the membership of Nigeria to join OPEC, I'll move on to the next question that talks about whether Nigeria should still be in OPEC or not. And I'll be for Nigeria to still be a member of OPEC. And I'll be bringing my how do I say it? My plight based on the benefits that Nigeria had already gotten from OPEC. Because it's like if even looking at the current situation of petroleum, exporting and importing of petroleum in Nigeria, it shows that if Nigeria will even have to even opt out of OPEC, it will cause a lot of damage. a lot of damages, saying that even Nigeria being independent, even Nigeria being in OPEC, there's still an issue with the price of petroleum in Nigeria. What if they now opt out of OPEC? What will be the endpoint of Nigeria opting out of OPEC when we are not even still satisfied with the issue of petroleum resources in Nigeria? So Nigeria have benefits here. Fourthly, OPEC membership has increased Nigeria political stature in the Committee of Nations. The oil power has established her as an African leader and afforded her the opportunity to play leading roles in African politics, as exemplifying in the struggle for Angola and Zimbabwe independence. Also, Nigeria had enjoyed many of achievements of OPEC since 1971, and they had obtained benefits which would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to wrest from unilateral from the oil companies. And this includes majority equity participation in oil concessions, increased oil royalties and petroleum tax rates, increased oil exploration, and a more efficient conservation policy, and the use of production and service contracts for operating the oil industry instead of the traditional concessionary system. And we also saw that following from this, we have that the dramatic increase in oil price with OPEC, which they achieved since the inception, especially since 1970, when OPEC countries took over the price administration from the oil company. And according to OPEC, the market price had increased from $5.397 per barrel in 1973 to $34 per barrel in 1982. Similarly, the posted price of Arabian market crude rose from $2.170 per barrel in 1960 to $18 per barrel in 1972. And an interesting feature of this price administration OPEC ability is to maintain crude oil prices in slack markets and increase oil price in time of excess demand. So the prospect here is that Nigeria's present economy, therefore, is actually not in opting out of OPEC, but to see to the effective management of the oil economy, since oil is the main engine of the growth of the economy, and since it is the government policy to use the oil resources to transform the country in a modern state, technologically and industrially. It's also saying that to develop capacity of economy and to thus permanently improve the standard of the living of the people. The prospect lies in the efficient and effective use of oil resources. So here it's saying that the solution is not that Nigeria should leave OPEC, no, but should work towards saying that Nigeria government, well, because the aim of the government was to move from traditional concession to have a proper standard, how will I say, they need to have regulations for the Nigeria Petroleum, and seeing that Nigeria citizens, everyone benefits from it. So Nigeria is not to opt out from OPEC, but to see that these modern concessions that they have should be of a good benefit to Nigeria. And also, the development is also significant in assessing the prospect for OPEC oil in general, and for oil in Nigeria economy in particular, because there is a presumption in some circles that present slump in the oil market may be temporal. A closer examination may even in fact indicate that it may not be temporal. OPEC may, through its production cutback, stabilize current oil prices, and there may be certainly appear some recovery in our oil demands when the economic recession is over. But the present efforts by the consuming countries to develop and expand subsidies for oil, to develop domestic oil resource, to achieve greater economy in oil consumption, and to enforce stringent conservation measures must be expected to continue. In conclusion, we may therefore conclude that the answer to Nigeria's current economic problem is not to pull out of OPEC. That is very regrettable. It would be a very retrograded step to take for Nigeria. And the answer lies in rather judicious management of our oil resources, diversifying our use and market for oil, building up robust reserve to withstand future oil shocks, diversification of economic and massive expansion of agriculture to reduce the heavy dependence on oil. Rather than pull out, Nigeria should continue to help to strengthen OPEC. Without OPEC, the oil exporting country of the third world in general, and Nigeria in particular, could not have achieved the success in the fight against imperialism and multinationals in the control of the natural resources. Nigeria has not to lose by operating outside, but to gain more by operating inside OPEC. Thank you. So yes, I'm done. Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you. Can hear you. Is that the last person? I think we're still having one more.
Yes, we have
Yes.
one more, sir.
Okay, continue so I can.
Okay, good morning, sir. My name is Tiwalade. So for the first question, what is the basis of Nigeria's membership of OPEC? I would look at three things. First, Nigeria's position before joining OPEC, then the general basis of membership of member states, and Nigeria's subjective basis. So before joining OPEC, Nigeria was like many other developing oil countries, subject to concession contracts. And in the 1950s and 60s, Nigeria's oil industry was dominated, like mentioned by earlier speakers, by foreign companies that determined the value of oil that Nigeria was producing, determined how they wanted to sell, determined everything from production to sale and price to Nigeria's disadvantage. So when Nigeria joined OPEC in 1971, it held a lot of benefits for Nigeria as a country and the organization generally. In general basis of countries that joined OPEC, Article 7 of the OPEC statute provides that a country that would join OPEC should be a substantial net exporter of crude oil, and it should have fundamentally similar interests to those of the other member countries to become a full member. So, what is the criteria for being a substantial net exporter of crude oil, and what fundamentally similar interests are not specifically or in detail defined by the statute. But the first Secretary General of OPEC did state some of what he believed the common interests, the fundamentally similar interests are. And he said that one, for the countries that were member states of OPEC, some of the basis of their membership was that they were developing countries, they were large exporters of oil, that they needed assistance of foreigners in the exploitation of their oil resources because their industries were extremely underdeveloped. They were dependent on their oil revenues for financing their budgets. Oil was a major export, as mentioned earlier, so it was a major source of income for them in deciding how to spend money for their economies. So, the first Secretary General of OPEC mentioned these as common interests of the member states joining OPEC at that time. For Nigeria specifically, OPEC its membership in OPEC has served as something that provides structure and stability to its own oil industry and its interaction with the international oil markets, generally speaking. Now, I'll be arguing for Nigeria's continued membership of OPEC. And the first thing I would say is the last thing that I mentioned, the Nigeria's definite basis for membership, which is the structure that OPEC as an organization provides for the production, for the exploitation, production, and exports of oil within its member states, price regulation of not just its member states, but its use of the oil that its member states provides to regulate the oil markets, generally speaking, I think works to Nigeria's advantage. Nigeria has been independent for decades now, and I would say that in the other aspects or in the other industries where we are functioning without any agreements, any such agreement with other countries, we're not doing so spectacularly well on our own. The level of leadership and administration of many other resources that Nigeria has and that have potential with Nigeria has been very poor and very low. So I think that in arguing for the structure and stability that OPEC provides is very beneficial to Nigeria. Another thing that OPEC, still speaking to structure, is, for example, in 1990, there was the war between Kuwait and Iraq, where the Iraq invaded Kuwait, and it was called the Gulf War. And one of the things that OPEC did, because it had an interest in the war that was ongoing between Iraq and Kuwait, and because it knew how it would affect, which it did eventually, prices of oil, generally speaking, it puts measures in place to regulate the prices of oil by leveraging on the other countries that were in existence. And its interest in Kuwait and Iraq's conflict at the time led it to help and put in effort in ensuring that, to some extent, the conflict was resolved as soon as possible. Yeah, so it has been argued by some of the people who stated that they would go against that. It is making us dependent on oil exporting as an income source or as a revenue source as a nation. I would say that, for instance, countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, when they joined OPEC, we were all developing countries. But now, the UAE, for instance, has diversified to things like tourism, the air industry, finance, and other things. So even though it still relies on oil to a large extent, it also gets a substantially good amount of revenue from other aspects of its industry. So, if it could work for one country that's very similar to us and sometimes might even be considered to be in a worse situation than us because of its geographical location, then I don't think that argument would particularly work perfectly against Nigeria's membership. I think that one thing that has happened is that there has been poor management of resources, generally speaking. And without OPEC's existence, or without our membership of OPEC, oil would have been another addition to the list of poorly managed resources. My final argument for OPEC's membership, I would say that OPEC contributes to the evolution of the industries of its member states. The ability to come together with other countries that are producing oil, who have different areas of expertise in different other things. For instance, the way we can sit at the table as Nigeria with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Venezuela, Kuwait, and make decisions affects the quality of decisions that we put out as a group and as a nation. and contribute to how the steps that we take to develop our own oil industry, infrastructure-wise, production-wise, method-wise, etc. So whether we decide to take the advantages that it provides is another thing entirely. One thing that OPEC is doing that I found out is a gas pipeline called the Ajaokuta Kaduna Kano gas pipeline that is under construction. So OPEC is contributing to that to be able to transport natural gas from Ajaokuta in Kogi State to Kano, covering a very, very large distance. So these are my arguments, and this is my answer. Thank you very much. The next speaker may go.
I think that's about it.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. Any other one pending?
Good morning. So, yes, my name is Toy Bashitu, and I will be arguing against Nigeria's continued membership of OPEC. So, I will be hinging most of my points based on the fact that Nigeria's interests and OPEC's interests don't always align. For example, in the times of competition, in the crude oil industry, Nigeria's crude oil's main competitor is the Brent crude in the North Sea, and of course, shale oil, just as someone just mentioned. Now, I want to bring a specific point in time to use to marshal my points. In 1981, there was an oil glut, and OPEC needed the prices of oil to stay up. But then BNOC, that is the British National Oil Company, actually cut down their own prices so that they can sell more. So BNOC is Nigeria's main competitor because they have their non-sea oil, which in terms of quality is the same with Nigeria's Bonny Light. So when we talk about things like this, Nigeria, OPEC and Nigeria's interest don't always align in that manner because Nigeria needed crude oil revenues. And also, in some of OPEC's members, they have this lack of transparency. National companies of this country do not collaborate with each other because they believe that their contracts with the oil multinationals should remain secret. This has made it difficult for OPEC to function effectively. There is a kind of rift among OPEC themselves because they don't usually cooperate. It is difficult for OPEC to function effectively. And meanwhile, OPEC was intended to provide stability and revenue for its members. Also, there's the issue of unequal burden. If you look at OPEC, there are some members that are actually very large. Let's take Saudi Arabia, for example. Saudi Arabia, I think Saudi Arabia is OPEC's biggest oil producer. Now, sometimes Saudi Arabia intends to actually influence the market by cutting in its own production. And Saudi Arabia being a major player, when it does this, it acts as a swing producer, it will cut output. And when it does so, it will gain a lot. But Nigeria will not be really affected by the high prices that happens with OPEC and majorly Saudi Arabia when it cuts their output. Also, there has been arguments about OPEC as an Arab organization. If you look at the history of OPEC, it usually arose out of Arab nationalism. Some Nigerians have viewed OPEC as an Arab organization, which have fueled resentment against the organization. And more so, there's this aspect of loss of sovereignty. OPEC's quota system acts as an infringement on Nigeria's sovereignty. There have been calls in the past for Nigeria to withdraw from OPEC due to the perception that the organization was an Arab organization. In fact, the Nigerian delegates to OPEC pointed out that OPEC resolutions did not explicitly mention member quotas. So I would just hinge my arguments against OPEC on those points. Thank you.
Any more?
No, sir, that was the last speaker, sir.
Okay. Fantastic argument from the presented. That's the essence of the clinical approach we want to deploy. We want to be sure that the essence, fundamentally, students need to bear in mind that OPEC is an institution in the energy and petroleum, energy industry, petroleum and gas essentially, and is a cartel coming together of like-minded countries for strategic objectives to influence global prices of crude oil. Some of you argue that it's a plus to Nigeria. Some argue that it's a negative benefit to Nigeria. You all are right. We have to, when engaging a question of this nature, you need to cast your mind back. I think the second speaker was the one that did a good job in giving a good background, a kind of overview as to where we're coming from. But that's also this. So in attempting a scenario of that nature, in a debate, in an essay, in an exam, you give an overview of where we were. Where we were was when the multinationals were the ones dominating the energy sector, particularly petroleum sector of developing countries. So then all of you skipped one fundamental thing. I think the second speaker alluded to it when she said the permanent sovereignty over natural resources. Two incidents happened. When in the post-independence era, developing countries started coming together to push an agenda. One of the agendas pushed forward was the need for them to have control over their natural resources. You know, the resources then were all under their colonial masters. So then there was a resolution in 1955 or 6, I can't remember the exact date now. It's in the book, in the materials given to you, which acknowledged passively the interest of developing countries over their natural resources. But developing countries continue to push further. So that led to the rewarding of that UN resolution, which now confers permanent sovereignty over natural resources to countries. That if a sovereign country, then you are the owner of your natural resources. Because even after independence, colonial overlords were still indirectly controlling the energy sectors of these former colonies. So when the resolution was eventually passed, that now emboldened the oil-producing nations to come together as a body to continue pushing the frontiers of their dominance, relevance, and benefit to derive maximum benefit from their natural resources. So OPEC came together and agreed a policy direction, which essentially was that, yes, we are coming together as a body, but anybody who wants to join us must have two things in particular in mind or on his agenda or as a requirement. One, you must be a country that exercises permanent sovereignty over your petroleum resources. Because even despite the resolution, some were still not that assertive as to their rights. So OPEC said, for you to join us, you must, one, be a country that exercises permanent sovereignty over your natural resources. And the way to do or to ensure you do so is to have a national oil company that is in charge of licensing, of refining, of everything, licensing of multinationals, so that you take charge of your petroleum resources. You can't be a member of OPEC if you are still controlled by certain multinationals behind the doors. So when that happened, then countries started establishing national oil companies. That was what led eventually to Nigeria National Company that eventually crystallized into NNPC. So having met those two basic requirements, then Nigeria now took steps to join OPEC by fulfilling the membership requirement as given to you last week. The question is, are we deriving appropriate benefits? In law, there's no yes or no answers. None of you argue the fact that what is the basis of the quota allocated by OPEC? Is it just that once you are a member of OPEC, or once you're a founding father of OPEC, then you are allocated. Once you're a founding member of OPEC, like the Five Sisters, then you have 5 million barrels or more allocated to you. Wouldn't it be based on the size of the OPEC country in terms of population? Wouldn't it be based on a equitable proportion, meaning that, you guys have developed, let's give more to countries that have not developed so that they can maximize the benefit of the natural resources they have to develop? Because those natural resources might not be relevant in the coming years or decades. Who tells you that petroleum will still be relevant in the next 50 years? Who tells you that cars will not be running on water? Because cars are running on air now, on solar, on electricity. So the world is evolving. So if you have crude oil under your land, your country, and you are not exploiting it to the maximum benefit, the crude oil might become useless. It used to be coal. Coal is no longer in high demand. So the world might change from reliance on energy resource, particularly fossil fuel, to another thing, maybe air, maybe sunshine, which is already happening. So they now argue that it doesn't make commercial sense to restrain or restrict developing countries from producing as much of crude oil as possible so that they can jumpstart their development. There's also the flip side of it that, even Nigeria that has 2 million barrels has never been able to meet that quota. Nigeria was doing 2.5 thereabout before, but now a lot of vandalism, theft, bunkering, stealing of crude is now happening. Nigeria is not even able to meet the 2 million barrels. Some say, Nigeria produces more than 2 million, but only that is only able to account for a fraction of it because the rest is stolen. Some argue that if OPEC has been that effective, then crude oil that is stolen from Nigeria should not find its way into the international market. Some argue that was the case in the Kimberley process, when Congos and other DR countries that relied on diamonds started having increasing conflicts, civil war every now and then, war, military coup, killing. And those were avenues for juntas and bloodthirsty guys there to engage and steal diamond from Congo. And the world met to say, we can't continue to buy blood diamonds from these countries because that will mean we're encouraging in continual crisis in those countries. So they needed to discourage illegal markets for blood diamonds. So they entered into a Kimberley process that diamonds must be certified. That any diamond that comes from war-torn countries like Congo and others will be rejected. So they had that Kimberley process. And we argued years back that, if the world had been that efficient and effective in curtailing the incident of blood diamonds, we should by now have a huge global warehouse of rejected diamonds. And we can't see or find any. It means the world is still complicit in certain ways. The same thing with the crude oil. So the stolen crude oil from Nigeria and other countries should be rejected. It's not rejected because there is a market, undercover market somewhere. So crude oil are produced from Nigeria officially and unofficially. So both the official and unofficial still get mainstream into the global market. While Nigeria may benefit to an extent from the official crude oil market, the unscrupulous ones benefit unofficially from the illegal market. But both illegal and legal markets thrive in the international marketplace for crude oil. So, meaning to that extent, Nigeria is a member of OPEC, but Nigeria can't seem to be that protected from OPEC. Some say even the insignificant amount that we produce, we are not feeling the impact. The politicians are still in it. And those are the kind of interesting arguments that we expect them to be making for and against as to what is happening. So on that note, I will leave you guys to go and read up on the materials and also beef up your knowledge about OPEC and activities. So read more about international oil market and players and institutional framework. You have them in the materials given to you. So when we meet next Monday, by the grace of God, I guess, what time do you meet on Monday?
By 12:30, sir.
12:30. So we'll be taking on the second topic, which is contractual arrangement and state participation, right? Is that?
Yes, sir.
Good. So we'll be dealing with that next week, and then you can start to read up on that, particularly the materials given to you on the remaining topics. So, guys, have a lovely morning. Any questions for me before I dissolve the class? So, in the absence of any, I wish you a beautiful weekend. Bye-bye.